Welcome to Bear Tracks, the official podcast for Butler Community College. In each episode, we feature inspirational and lively conversations with our graduates about their memories of student days, stories, challenges, and career highlights. We have so many alumni who are leading change and innovation in their respective fields around the world. And whether you're a recent graduate or a seasoned professional, we hope you'll find inspiration and new perspectives through the conversations we have on this show. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the episode. Today on Bear Tracks, we have 2021 Butler graduate Addison Haiden with us to talk about her journey as a Grizzly and how it was a little unique and different from a lot of other students. So Addison, thank you so much for being with us today and joining us on Bear Tracks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hayley. I am super excited to be here and I am very ready to share my story.
Good. And thank you also for writing into us at Bear Tracks Podcast at butlercc.edu and self-selecting to be on the show. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, totally happy to be here. Super happy.
So let's start by you kind of sharing about yourself and how you came to Butler Community College because you're not from Butler County. So what was the thing that got you to be a Grizzly in the first place?
Yeah, so you're right. I'm actually from Lindsborg, Kansas, which is in McPherson County. And of course, as a high school student, you have all these big decisions to make, where to go to college, what are you going to major in? And I always knew that I didn't want to go anywhere typical, as I always called it. I wanted to go somewhere extraordinary. I felt like I had a lot of gifts and talents to offer. And so then I just started researching places. And I was always drawn to community college for financial reasons. I wanted a smaller atmosphere. Especially, I knew at the time I wanted to either go into theater or mass communication. So I wanted that very personalized experience. So I went on a couple of college visits and I just didn't feel like any of the places really kind of fit my vibe and kind of what I was looking for. And so then I heard about Butler. And so I started doing research, scheduled a visit, and I immediately knew once I walked on campus, I was like, I love this place. There was just an energy, and I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. It's very cliche, very like almost movie-esque, but that's how I describe it to people. Like I literally walked on campus and I was like, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I met with some of the theater professors, and that only solidified my decision even more. And it was just wonderful. And I was like, I have to go here.
I had a similar experience where I just felt like I was coming home to Butler. That was where I wanted to go, and it just felt right. I understand. You're not cliche. It's just the truth, right? We have a feeling at Butler that draws people to us. So you were a 2019 graduate from high school, which means you had a very specific college experience, and you graduated from Butler in 2021. We can say very easily, unless people don't know, that was COVID. So tell me about your experience at Butler during COVID, which was a monumental challenge, but also provided monumental opportunities for all of us.
Yeah, totally. Monumental is a great word to associate with my time at Butler. So first semester was very normal. Of course, I was trying to figure out a good routine, how to be a good college student, how to learn in kind of this different atmosphere. And I was a part of all the theater productions. So I was still a very busy person like I was in high school. And so I'm just plugging along, going through college, loving it, enjoying everything. And second semester hits, I'm bummed. I'm like, oh, my first year's almost done. And then suddenly, it's like we get this email like, hey, we're going to extend spring break. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of odd. Like, I didn't think that was a thing that all colleges normally do. And my friends were like, what does this mean? What's going on? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just here existing like all you people are. And so it was like, okay, your world is completely different. And like matter of minutes, it felt like my whole world just shifted. And as a theater major, it was kind of scary to go home and have my parents ask me all these questions that I don't know answers to. Like, can I even perform a show? Can I be in a show? Is theater gone forever? I remember my parents were like, have you considered changing your major? And I was like, no, not at all. And they were like, well, if this is a permanent thing, you might have to look into something else. So there was a lot of fear and concern right at the beginning. as to what was going to happen to people like me and professionals in theater. So I had a theater makeup class at the time with Bernie Wonsettler, and it was so funny. You still have to complete your coursework. So I would just sit at home and kind of hang out, do the rest of my classes, and then I would save my stage makeup class for last. And I would just paint on like a zombie face and then just be in my home with the zombie makeup. Or one time I did a werewolf. Like it was such a fun and surreal time because you're like, did that really happen? And then you're like, oh yeah, that was real. That wasn't a dream.
Yeah. How did your professors, Bernie Wonsettler, who's retired now, but a legendary theater professor at Butler, as well as Bob Peterson, who also retired this year after 4 decades teaching at Butler, how did they help with the transition from this very hands-on degree path that you were on to all online?
Yeah, I was very involved and I talked to Bernie and Bob daily. My first semester, and even, of course, most of second semester, I talked to them almost every day. And I would go into their office. They would talk to me about assignments, different things for the productions. So it was hard to adjust to going to talking to these people every day, collaborating. I felt like I was learning so much about theater quickly. And then all of a sudden, you're back home. You're not getting that experience. You're not having those people talk to you about their stories, about what they've experienced. It was hard. I kept in contact with Bernie for the most part during COVID and said, hey, how do you feel about this? Are you freaked out as a theater person? Like, what does this mean for theater? And so it was nice to have him there to talk about, don't worry, this is crazy. Everyone is trying to navigate this. We'll come back. We'll figure out what to do together. And at the time, like I was doing box office as well. So it was like, if there are no people, I can't sell tickets and do box office. That was like kind of my main role at the time. So I was like, am I now out of a job at Butler? And he reassured me so much. You are a student here. We are going to take care of you and make sure that you learn and get as much experience as you possibly can. So him and Mr. Peterson did a great job still helping the theater students, even with those like intense circumstances of how to stage a production when you have to be a certain amount apart from your other actors. It's stuff that nobody ever had to think about before.
Yeah. It was nothing we were prepared for, and I'm a staff member, and so my experience was very different. I just packed up my things and went home for the summer to work, but the instructors had so many things to juggle, as well as other departments that are critical to students, like our IT department, which mobilized laptops and equipment for students almost overnight. It was
Right.
miraculous, the things they did. Did you feel supported by other parts of the college during that?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Krull was amazing because I went to her at one point, just kind of in passing on campus, and she had asked, like, how are you feeling? How's the theater doing? And I was like, I'm concerned. I'm a little freaked out. And she was like, well, don't worry. Next semester, there's going to be theater. I'm going to come to the performances. I will be there to support you. I love Dr. Kroll because she was there almost every performance. She always took the time to say, hey, how's it going? Stop by the box office. So she's a wonderful person, and I just look up to her so much because she made my time at Butler so nice. Like lots of the faculty did. Bernie, Bob, her, like, it was just such an amazing experience, honestly.
I'm glad because this would be a different conversation, I feel like, if it wasn't, and I know she would be honored to hear those words as she's also looking at retirement, and we're
Right.
in the process, as of this recording, of hiring a new president, so, yes, she's a very student-focused person and always make sure that's the first priority for everybody. So coming back, we all came back in the fall of 2020 and school resumed, quote, as normal, but it wasn't normal. So what was the on-stage experience like that semester and maybe the spring as well, the following spring, where you did have to distance yourselves and we had all these regulations and rules in place?
Great question. I actually transitioned as the box office manager, having all of these kind of jobs and responsibilities, into a newfound sound technician. Of course, because we could still sell a limited amount of tickets, but I was not answering phone calls, emails, reserving tickets at the rate that I was previously. So it was kind of interesting to transition out of that role into sound technician because I'd never done sound before. Bernie approached me and said, "Hey, you have like a really nice set of skills. I feel like I see something in you. Maybe let's transition to this to keep you busy, focused, and get different experience in a different area of theater." And I was like, I would love to do this. I think this is a great opportunity. I had done box office that entire previous year. So it was kind of fun and interesting to start something completely new in the fall. So I transitioned into being head sound technician pretty quickly. So we did Reader's Theater, we did A Christmas Carol, and it wasn't just, sitting, plugging sound cues into things every day. It was like, okay, why are we doing this for this show? What sounds do you think of when you hear this line, when you're in this scene? It was very artistic, which I had not gotten at all really in the box office. It's very business oriented. Of course, you answer the phone, you respond to this email, but I was actually being, in a way, creative that I had never been in that aspect of theater before. And I really fell in love with it. And then every show, I was like, can I sign up and do sound? Can I do sound again? And Bernie was like, yeah, of course, come and do sound for us. So it was nice because I didn't have to worry so much about on stage and how they had to think about distancing a lot. I had the opportunity to just be all the way in the back doing my sound, making sure microphones and everything were disinfected properly. That was more the role that I kind of took on, and I thought it was great, and I really learned a lot from it.
That's one of those things that COVID, though it was such a negative experience, made this opportunity available to you that you might not have done if you had just been having a normal theater experience at Butler without this global pandemic going on. And so it's why I said at the beginning, there were so many of these opportunities that came out of the pandemic because we had to look at things very differently and we had to reframe how we maybe did everything. And that woke up a new thing in you that you love. So that's great. I love that.
Yeah, and even doing just readers theater. I feel like a typical theater season, you want to do musicals, you want to do productions on stage that have a heavy stage presence. So, readers theater, it was a new type of theater I had never been a part of. So, to kind of watch that and do sound at the same time, it was a whole new experience that I loved, and I'm always looking out. I'm like, Readers Theater, people doing Readers Theater. So I would just like to give a shout out to Bob Peterson and Bernie Wonsettler for just expanding my theater knowledge and enriching my experience at Butler because it was so great. And to this day, I'm chasing that feeling, that energy that I got from the Butler Theater program wherever I go.
That's lovely. Do you have a good pull quote from Mr. Peterson that you can throw at us? Some of the best
Oh
advice
gosh.
maybe he gave you?
I have a little funny story that I love telling whenever I meet new people and I kind of talk about my Butler experience. I talk about Mr. Peterson and they're like, okay, well, like, what's his personality like? And so I'm sitting in my either acting one or two class. And Mr. Peterson is saying that every morning I get up, I get ready to go to class, and I look in the mirror and I sing, "What's new, pussycat?" And the guy staring back at me in the mirror goes, "Oh." And I just started dying laughing in class because that's amazing. Like, what a response to, like, prompt your students and, like, tell them about yourself, and that's what you say. Like, I just loved him, and he was so amazing to be, like, in class with him. He was a gem, he told amazing stories. He was, I don't know, just so interactive as a teacher as well. I learned so much from him. So, that's kinda my Mr. Peterson story, but when we do orientation at the beginning of every year, he talks about how, like, your time at Butler is very limited. It's only 2 years. So you're going to go off, you're going to go to new places, you're going to be the new kid. And that can be uncomfortable being the new person in either a department, a new school. So he just basically said, embrace it, embrace the uncomfortability because you'll fit in. You'll find your place, you'll find your people, but just know it's temporary and that you'll be okay. And I remember that discussion like my freshman year. I was sitting all alone in the auditorium, kind of just off by myself. And he was like, "You guys are going to be okay. You're going to find your friends. You're going to find your place here. Just don't worry about it." So there's kind of my happy, funny Mr. Peterson and then inspirational Mr. Peterson.
I think that Butler does a lot of people, myself included, a world of good in building confidence when you're just coming from high school, perhaps, or if you're entering education for the first time after many years away from it. And it can feel so overwhelming, regardless of your experience. And I would hope, and you're speaking to, that our environment does give you that little boost where you're like, "No, I can do this. I can tackle things." Even if a global pandemic shuts our school down, everything's going to continue on one way or another. And in that vein, how was the transition then to McPherson College, which is where you went after you graduated from Butler?
I just, as a person, it takes a while for me to adapt to change. But I will say, technically, I went into theater as well there. So I felt like my technical background was very solid. I knew lots of different things in sound. I stage managed during my time at Butler. So I have lots of experience because of Butler. So when I went to McPherson, I could almost give them my resume and go, here, I've done this and this. And they were like, oh, wow. Okay. So we can put you anywhere. So it was nice to kind of have that to rely on. So maybe the awkwardness and uncomfortability and trying to find a new friend group, trying to figure out where to go to class and kind of work in this new environment, I didn't have to worry about anything that Butler had taught me because I already had developed those skills. So eventually I found my place, figured out kind of what group I belonged to, and you just get back in the groove of being a student and learning and doing everything like I tend to do. I take on a lot, so but without Butler, I wouldn't have had many or if any of the skills that I had learned to be a theater technician. So I'm grateful for my 2 years at Butler. Regardless of COVID, it was crazy and definitely socially, it was very interesting being a college student during COVID.
Yeah. I don't envy any of you that had to go through that, and I think that all of the students who were able to maintain during that year are really incredible because you did have a very singular experience that certainly I cannot compare anything to from my years in college, so a lot of kudos to you for sticking it out, not kind of quitting and saying, "Oh, I'll get back to that later."
Thank you.
So tell us about your role that you got to cameo in Bob Peterson's Uniquely Frank show.
Yes. Okay. I love talking about this because not only did I have a fun little cameo, I was stage managing for the first time ever. I had never stage managed before. At my high school, I was strictly an actress. I was like, the tech people, they do their job, but I'm here to act. So when I went to Butler, it was a huge transition to then be like, no, I don't want to be on stage anymore. I'm good. So not only was I learning the basics and the fundamentals of being a stage manager, Mr. Peterson was like, I know that you can act, and I know that you could do a really nice job embodying this character. My character's name was Jill, and she was kind of like the villain. She was the kid from the other school that came in to show everyone that, hey, there are preppy kids everywhere, and you better watch out. And I loved that Mr. Peterson was like, I feel like you could really embody this role because I never considered myself a preppy villain per se, but it was nice to kind of get into that mindset and be somebody totally different than my everyday self. So it was like Addison sitting at the stage manager's desk doing her job and then kind of got in the zone. And then there I was. I was Jill and I was walking on stage and I had a certain walk. I had a very certain way that I spoke my lines. It was a wonderful, once in a lifetime thing that most people don't ever get to do stage manage and then go out and be a character. So I had a wonderful time. And it's a great show with a great message. Children's theater is very inspiring. And from then, I've actually gone and directed my own versions of children's shows. So he kind of started me on this path of helping out and combining theater education, community engagement. So I had a wonderful experience with Mr. Peterson's shows.
There's nothing like playing a villain that gets you out of your skin, and you just get to have fun. I've done that a couple times back in my youth, and I loved being the villain because it was so not who I normally am, and that was why it was fun. That's why it's acting.
Exactly.
Well, tell us about your experience with children's theater now and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Lindsborg, and so McPherson, of course, is only a couple minutes away from Lindsborg, it feels like. So last year, I was approached to do the Broadway RFD children's show, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not a director by nature. I feel like, of course, I've done acting, I've been a technician. I'm like, guess this is the one area that I haven't really explored, but I don't know if kids would really pick up on like what I'm talking about, what I'm saying. I just don't really know how to relate to kids, is what I thought at the time. And the board was like, no, we feel like you'd be really good at this. And so thought about it. They said, pitch a show, think about it, and then we'll go from there. So I thought about it and I was like, let's do it. Why not? I can be an actor, a technician, and a director. Why not? And so then I was like, if I'm gonna go big on my first thing, like let's go Lion King, because it's a wonderful show. Lots of people are familiar with the plot, the music. So I pitched Lion King Kids to the Broadway RFD board, and it was approved. And so then I started my career as a director, I guess. But I learned a lot that summer, because it's very different trying to give acting directions to a child versus giving it to an adult. So I learned a lot about patience. I learned about how to conduct things in a more calming tone. A lot of good personal growth that summer, and how to, communicate what I think are like universal theatrical ideas to kids. And I feel like they really loved being animals and kind of getting into character. So right after that summer was done, I was like, I need to do this again. It was a huge success in my mind. I loved it. So this past summer, I was like, I approached the board. I said, hey, I have a show in mind. Here are my set layouts. This is kind of what I want to do. And so this last summer we did Willy Wonka Kids, which again, a super fun show. And it was nice to have kids return. And I was like, oh, hey, how was your summer? Like, how'd your school year go and everything like that? And you just create like this connection and this bond with these kids. You see them grow, you see them learn about life. You see them kind of like take on different characters that maybe last summer they wouldn't have been prepared to do, but this summer they've lived a little, they've gotten a little more comfortable in theater. So it was a super fun experience. I feel like both summers have been super successful. Each summer I feel like I learned something new. I get to hang out with kids and do some really, really fun stuff that I'd never thought about before, and never even would have thought that I would have maybe fit into the role, but I took a chance and it really paid off, honestly.
That's lovely. I did summer theater from age 8 to 18, and it
Wow.
the influence that the directors had on me as a kid helped make me who I am. So I know you're probably doing that for those kids as well, because you've got such a great energy and such aura. So what's been your favorite thing? Acting, directing, or technical?
Ooh, that's a great question. I feel like there are different things about each aspect that I really love and enjoy, but kind of deep down at heart, I feel like I'm an actress at heart. And I've also done like summer Broadway shows kind of at Broadway RFD. And my favorite role that I love to talk about, if anyone knows me, they know exactly what I'm going to bring up. We did Into the Woods the summer after I graduated high school, and I played Milky White, the cow. And it was so fun, and I was like, at first I was like, "Oh, I'm totally offended that I'm playing a cow." But then the director was like, "No, no, no. Listen, I have this great plan. I have this great idea for you." And then once he showed me kind of the vision, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is super cool." And I was literally like the only person on stage that was playing like an animal for one, and I didn't have to memorize any lines. I just had to embody being a cow. And let me tell you, it was like the best role I've ever had in my whole life.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it was definitely summer for the books.
I love Into the Woods. What's your favorite theater production, either that you've been in or haven't?
Oh my gosh. That's a wonderful question. Let me think back here. I always talk about that summer just because high school had ended. I was in a role that I never would have thought I would have ever done, but I loved being a cow, I guess. Um, I really liked doing, on a more like serious note, we did Joe Sent Me. at Butler. That was like right after we came back that like second fall. And it was very serious and dramatic in a way that I had not really been a part of a show that was kind of hitting some like hard topics and in such a graceful way. As a sound technician, when you're dealing with serious topics, you don't really want like a harsh like sound cue right in the middle of something very deep and very impactful. So, from a technician standpoint, I loved that show because it was how to play with levels of softness, how to play with serious topics and maybe elevate them with sound to a whole nother impactful level for the audience. So honestly, that's probably the production coming to my mind that was just very impactful. And I felt like it was so good at the time, especially coming back kind of in a new normal for COVID, a show that dealt with serious topics, yet I felt like I was really contributing to a beautiful art piece that was very,
Mhm.
just kind of deeply beautiful.
Wonderful. I love that it shaped you so much.
Yeah,
So as we kind of
totally.
are looking to wrap up here, if anybody's listening that's maybe thinking about coming to a community college, what's some advice you would give them while they're considering their decision?
Yeah, for anyone thinking about coming to Butler, I again would say totally do a visit, get on campus and just see how you feel because your body, your vibe, your energy will tell you if it's most likely going to be a match or not. Like I said, I went plenty of places and I just knew like "Ah, this isn't me. I don't feel like I'm at home here." But the minute I stepped onto campus, I stepped into the theater building, I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to spend my next 2 years. And I would say another kind of good piece of advice and something that I learned at Butler, you will meet so many people and so many different groups of people. So just be open to meeting all those new people. My second year at Butler, I lived in like the little small house on campus with like a good group of girls. And I had such an amazing experience. I could go out with them, hang out, and I would have never seen myself in that type of environment before COVID, but kind of, trying to figure out life after COVID, I was just willing to do whatever it took to be on campus, meeting people, doing all sorts of stuff. And so it was nice to just meet those group of girls, kind of figure out life after COVID, I guess. So you are blessed, new and upcoming students that you don't really have to worry about COVID. So hats off to you, but just be willing to do all sorts of different experiences, meet new people, go to a game night. Maybe you're like, oh, I don't really like board games. Go to a game night and see who's there, and you never know who you might click with. And from that, maybe they'll say, hey, do you like roller skating? Sure, yeah, I love roller skating. Then you guys go out roller skating. I mean, it's such a great campus with lots of fun and interesting people. You will definitely find people and hear stories that will stick with you forever. So that's kind of my little tidbit of advice.
Perfect. I think that's a great note to end it on. Addison, thank you so much for your time, for telling us about the challenges and the opportunities that you had at Butler. And thank you for being a light and a shining grizzly for everybody who meets you.
Thank you so much, Haley. Yeah, this was a great experience. And I'm so excited to see the podcast grow and flourish and see all the interesting people that you have on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Bear Tracks, the official podcast of Butler Community College. We hope you found the conversation as entertaining and enlightening as we did. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and don't forget to visit our website or email us at beartrackspodcast@butlercc.edu for more resources and opportunities to connect. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you more thought-provoking conversations on the next episode of Bear Tracks.